Now I grew up on Maui for the most part, so that's part of the reason I think it's one of the best islands. I have been to the Big Island, I've been to Kauai, and I've lived on Oahu when I went to the University of Hawaii. So I've been to those other islands, but I still think Maui's the best. So you're going to hear a lot about Maui, not so much about the other islands, a little bit. But if you have questions, again, like Rachel said, just please ask and I'll be happy to go over. All right, so for those of you who are not super familiar with Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands are shown here. The Big Island is what we call the island of Hawaii, so everybody just calls it the Big Island. I grew up on Maui, which is the second largest island. And from Maui, you can see 3 other islands, depending on where you are on Maui. You can see Molokai, Lanai, and Kaolave. Just to give you a little bit of the history around here, you can only get to, well, I think there might be a very small airport, but for the most part, when you're trying to go to Lanai, you have to take a boat. There's really no other way to get there. Usually it's just day trips, and there's very few people that live on Lanai. Kaolave, you cannot get to Kaolave at all. They used it as a testing ground for bombs during World War II. So you can't go there. They're trying to restore it. So there's a lot of unexploded bombs on that island. They're trying to, like I said, they're trying to fix it up, but you still can't go there. And then there's Molokai, which I've never been, but it's very pretty. And then if you're in Hana, which I'll show you pictures of Hana, you can sometimes see the Big Island of Hawaii. And I'll show you on a closer map where that is so you can tell where you can see the Big Island. I've also lived on Oahu, which I went to the University of Hawaii for a few years. And then I lived there for about a year after I graduated before moving back to Texas. And then I've been to Kauai. Kauai is beautiful. So if you're going to go to an island that's not Maui, I would probably suggest the Big Island or Kauai. And then this little island over here, Ni'ihau, is only for local, only for Hawaiians. You cannot go there except for by invitation, at least last I heard. Alrighty, so it has been, I haven't lived on Maui for probably about 12 years, but I go visit, I think it's been 12 years now, but I go visit my family who still lives there every few years at least. I haven't been lately because of COVID, unfortunately, so I really miss them. And they haven't been able to come over here either, so we're hoping to see each other sometime soon. But anyway, why is Maui the best, you ask? Well, this is my opinion on why Maui is the best. It has the best mix of country and city-ish. We probably would not, living in Houston, you probably wouldn't consider the city really a big city, but it is. For Hawaii, it's a city-ish. Honolulu is very city-ish. But some of the towns on Maui are bigger, and it is growing a lot. When I go back to visit, there's always a new stoplight, and I don't like it. They put stoplights up going up the mountain, and every time I go up there, I'm like, where does the stoplight come from? It doesn't need a stoplight. It has beautiful mountains. We have Haleakala Mountain, which is the biggest one. It is a dormant volcano. And then we have West Maui Mountains, which are much older, and you can tell by the erosion and stuff how it's a lot older than Haleakala. We have white sand beaches, red sand beaches, black sand beaches, and all of them are beautiful. We also have, there's a variety of areas on the island. We have tropical rainforest, and then we have super dry places that look like they could be in Texas with cactuses and all that kind of stuff, cacti all over the place. And the people are generally very friendly. We have great food, in my opinion. And if you can take out your phone, you can take a picture of the QR code or just type in the link here. Thank you, Rachel, for putting it on there. I see it pop up. So this is just kind of a fun quiz I put together to see what you may or may not know about local views. And I'm going to go ahead and click to the next slide. Hopefully everybody has filled it out. It's pretty short. All right, so what are these called? Now, this is what these are called in Hawaii. Yes, you might be right if you called them flip-flops if you live in Texas. I don't know why people would call them thongs, but I have heard them call them that before. And then, of course, you can always call them sandals, even though they're not technically, I guess, the nice sandals. In Hawaii, they are called slippers. All right. So if you call them flip-flops, you're going to get some odd looks. It took me a little while after moving there when I was about 11 to drop the flip-flops and the yalls. I got teased a little bit, so I tried to drop them as soon as possible because you get some funny looks. So if you selected slippers, you are correct. Number 2, who is the Hawaiian Superman? If you listen to local music, and even if you don't, you might recognize the name Israel Kamakavivaole. He did some very famous Hawaiian songs. He does that version of Over the Rainbow that you hear on a lot of movies, like 51st Dates, I believe it was on there. And he does a song called The Hawaiian Superman, which is Maui. 3, what does pau mean? Pau means all done. When you're done with something, when you're done with something, you just say, oh, pau, and you're done. So a lot of times when you ask a kid, are you done eating? They're like, oh, pau. What does choke mean? Okay, so some of these could be correct. You can choke if you got something stuck in your esophagus. It could be part of a car. But in Hawaii, it is something plentiful. Like, so when you have choke mangoes or choke food, it's a lot. Big wave is, I do have some answers on here. So if you selected one of the other answers, it was supposed to say yes or no, or what those answers actually are. I just saw Usha pop up big wave. A big wave usually is referred to as a gnarly wave. So we do use the term gnarly if you're a surfer. So gnarly would be huge, big, crazy, just something like over the top. But choke means something is plentiful. And number 5, what does ohana mean? Okay, so if you've seen Lilo and Stitch, hopefully you know this answer. It means family. Encore is actually hana ho. So if somebody says hana ho, if you did a good performance and you hear people shouting, so saying encore, or they'll clap. But most of the time you hear people say hana ho, which means more, encore, more. But ohana means family. And mahalo. All right, so I've heard people think that this does mean trash can because you see it on all the trash cans, but it means thank you. And number 7, what hand gesture do you give to someone who lets you pass on the road? I hope nobody picked a bad one, although I'm sure that does happen. So the correct one is actually, why would you say mahalo to a trash can? Thank you. The trash can is saying thank you to you for throwing your stuff away. Sorry, number 7, so the hand gesture would be shaka. So I don't know if anybody can see the screen. Hopefully you can still see me, but it's the shaka. I'll show you when we come back to the normal one. Number 8, what does wahine and kaine mean? And that is, you'll see them on bathrooms, women and men. So just like you might see Spanish here, you're going to see some Hawaiian words there. So on the bathrooms, you'll see wahine and kaine. Kaine. I might not always pronounce these correctly because I don't speak Hawaiian, but I do know some words just from living there. All right, and what ear do you put your flower behind if you are single? You put it behind the right ear if you're single, and the left ear means you're married or you're unavailable. So if you're dating somebody and you're unavailable, you put it behind your left ear. So you want to make sure you put it around or behind the correct ear so you don't send the wrong signals. Right. So here's just I hope everybody did well on that. If not, no worries, you'll learn. All right. So things I've been asked about living in Hawaii. So I've heard some kind of funny things, and a lot of them I have forgotten. I remember moving back over here and getting some odd questions. I'm like, why would people think that? Well, a lot of people don't know a lot about Hawaii, so it's understandable now. But one of the funniest ones is, how do you like living back in the United States? Well, as most of you know, it's the 50th state, so technically it is part of the United States. Although it is a very different culture when you're living over there, so I'll give you that. Very different from the mainland. So we call this the mainland. And I've gotten the question, can you drive to the other islands? Well, no, there's no bridges. Hence the next question, is there a bridge? No, there's no bridges. There's not even any boats to the most other islands. You can get the small boats that are mostly for tourists and whale watching to take you to Lanai, but for the most part, people do not travel from island to island on a boat. Some of the channels are actually really, really rough. They did have a boat from Oahu, I think, to Maui for a little bit. Nobody was happy about that. So it did not last very long at all. I think it lasted maybe a month and people protested and didn't like it at all. Because part of the reason they didn't like it is because people from other islands, locals and stuff like locals from other islands, even not just tourists, but locals from other islands could come over to Maui, and you can take a lot more stuff back on a boat. Like if you bring your car so you can drive around, you can pack up a lot of stuff in your car. And so they were taking local resources from Maui and taking them back to the other islands or Oahu. So people did not like that. It's a little harder to do that if you're flying on a plane because you have to pay for your luggage. And I do not know how to hula dance. I'm sorry. I think I had to took one hula class when I was in 8th grade, and that's about it. I was a ballet person, and I don't know how to surf either. I'm kind of afraid of big waves. I've gotten pounded a couple times, so maybe a little iffy. But most of my brothers all know how to surf. Not me. All right, so here's some other random information. There are no snakes in Hawaii. We've had a couple incidences where apparently people thought we should have snakes, so they tried to sneak snakes in. They are usually fined trying to do that, and all the snakes are gathered up and taken elsewhere, or I don't know what they do with them, but they do not let them roam free in Hawaii. So there are no snakes. That was a bit of an adjustment when I moved back to Texas. I had to watch out for snakes. Hawaii is rabies free. All animals have to go through a quarantine unless they're from another area without rabies. Like I think New Zealand, you can get, I had a friend who wanted a dog. They wanted a specific breed, so they had to get the breed from New Zealand so that they wouldn't have to go through quarantine, because New Zealand doesn't have rabies either. There are no plastic bags. So when you go to the grocery store, you do not get the option of paper or plastic. You either have to bring your own bag or you can get a paper bag. This is kind of new. Actually, that happened after I left, and I think it's a great thing because there are certain roads where the dump was that you would drive on. You see all these plastic bags stuck in the trees because it's very windy, so they would blow out of the dump area, and they would be all along the road, and it was just it was yucky. So they have now banned plastic bags. Hawaii does not observe daylight savings time. So when I have to call my family, whether it's if it's non-daylight savings time, regular time, it's 4 hours difference between here and Hawaii. And during daylight saving time, it's 5 hours difference. So I would have invited one of them to join us, but it's like 5 o'clock in the morning over there, and nobody wants to get up that early. Hawaiian and English are the official state languages. Pidgin, which is a mix of a bunch of different languages from the plantation days. They had plantation workers would come from their Portuguese, Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, and they all kind of came together and they created, trying to communicate with one another. They started a pidgin. But pidgin is now widely used. Most people kind of use a little bit of it. Sometimes I'll use some pidgin words when I was there, but I don't really speak pidgin. I can understand it, but I don't speak it. And a lot of times I'll say it wrong. But Hawaiian Pidgin is an official language. It's not the state's official language. Another tidbit of information, Charles Lindbergh, if you know who that is buried in Kipahulu, and you'll see that in some of my pictures. Most people do not have air conditioning or heating in their houses. You'll have it in the hotels and the restaurants sometimes, and the stores, but most people don't have air conditioning. Air conditioning is called a fan or the breeze. You just open a window. Of course, you don't have to worry about it that much because most of the time the wind is blowing, so it's usually pretty cool. And if you get really hot, you just go up the mountain. It's much cooler on top. Hawaii has fog instead of smog from the volcano, so it's fog. There's no single dominant race or ethnicity in Hawaii. It's the most diverse state, so that everybody, it's just a mix. They have the best shave ice, not shaved ice, shave ice. In my opinion, there's this place in Hana where you get the shave ice, and they usually put ice cream underneath it, and then they put the stuff on it. It's really good, and it has a different texture. Like it's much finer. I don't know. I have not been able to find it anywhere else. Everybody takes their shoes off before entering a house. So if you go visit, make sure you take off your shoes before going into their house. And the state fish is, can anybody pronounce that? Go ahead and try it. Okay, it's humu humu, nuku nuku, apawa'a. So when you see two A's together in Hawaiian, it's a'a. And usually there's a little mark, but sorry, I couldn't figure out how to do all the appropriate marks. The state bird is the nene goose, actually. And I believe I have a picture later. And the state flower is the yellow hibiscus. All right, so here we go around Maui. So I grew up on top of the mountain, which we call up country. I grew up in Kula mostly, which is up here, and Pukalani. And then also in Hana, which is over here on the tip. I hope everybody can see my my arrow. So I grew up mostly in those areas. That's where I spent most of my time. I'm much more of an upcountry person. Like hiking, I like the mountains, not so much of a beach person, although I have turned into a huge beach snob after living over there. I'm very particular about the beaches I go to and what kind of water I will get into. I'm sorry, I'm just going to confess that now. I am a total beach snob. So if you ask me to get into the Gulf of Mexico, it's not going to happen. All right. So we'll start in Kahului and Wailuku. Okay, so this is the main city town on Maui. We call it downtown. Kahului is usually referred to as downtown. If you're living up on the mountain, you say, I'm going downtown, and you usually mean Kahului. Or if you live in Hana, usually if you say you're going to the other side, you can be referring to pretty much anything on the other side of the island. Sometimes you're mostly referring to, you're going to Kahului to get supplies. You're basically going to Costco. Everybody goes to Costco. It's huge over there. So Kahului is where you're gonna find the airport, Costco, Target, Walmart, and malls and theaters. So this is where you're gonna do most of your supply shopping. And for some reason, I took a picture of this chicken. There's lots of wild chickens around, so I have multiple pictures of chickens. They just roam. And yeah, they just roam around. And sorry, that's a picture of my foot there because one time I accidentally took a picture of my foot and sent it to my aunt, and she's teased me. So now every time I travel someplace, I take a picture of my foot. Instead of a selfie, I take a footsie. All right, so we'll go up to Wailuku now. Wailuku is kind of, it's like our downtown where you have the courthouse and the hospitals. And then there is this lovely little valley called Iao Valley. It's a nice walking trail. So this one's not too hard. It's mostly paved. And here I only took a picture of, or posted a few pictures, but they have lots of these houses. Like these are all kind of more of the traditional houses of all of the different cultures that came to Hawaii. So here we have, I think that's a Japanese, and that one might be Filipino. I don't have the exact information. I took pictures of all of the little signs, but I didn't include them here. So this is Iao Valley. It's up in the Wailuku. You go past through Wailuku up to the Iao Valley, and it's just a nice little walking place. There's a stream, and it's nice. I think over this other picture over here is actually a Hawaiian hut. Then if you go around just a little bit, there is this, this is probably one of my favorite hiking trails. I would not be able to tell you the name of it because the only way I know how to get there is to drive. I don't know what it's called, but if you drive, but you can see over here is the Haleakala, and I have to drive around the West Maui Mountains. If you're facing them, it's going to be on your right, and it's just this lovely little trail. You're basically hiking along one of these ridges that you see here. So it's just on the opposite side. So you're hiking along this ridge, and it's a good hike. I mean, there's some pretty steep areas, but it's a trail, so it's not like you're going super off-road. But this is for serious, I would say serious hikers. So if you're not wanting that, stick with the EO Valley. It's a little bit of an easier walk. But if you like hiking, Maui is one of the best, a good place to go. All right, so we're going to move along to Kihei and Waialea and Mckenna area. And this is kind of on the other side of the island. This is where most people stay here or in Lahaina. We'll get to Lahaina in a little bit. But this is where all the resorts are. We have lots of beautiful white sand beaches, and there's lots of golf courses on this area. So this is where most people stay usually. It's the beach area. I used to go there all the time. On Sundays, we used to go to the beach and just hang out. But they can get really crowded. If you're going to this area, you want to go in the morning. There's usually less people at that point. And then we have the trade winds that pick up halfway later in the afternoons, and sometimes you'll get sandblasted. So usually in the mornings is the better time to go. Then I don't know if everybody can see it, but there's this tiny little island. It's Molokai, and that's a great snorkeling place. And there's Ma'alaya Harbor. You can get a boat, and they have snorkeling expeditions that you can go out there and go snorkeling. I've never been, actually. I love snorkeling, but I've never been to Molokai. All right, so we're going to go to Lahaina side. So this is on the West Maui side. It's the opposite direction as that trail I just showed you. And it's kind of dry. This whole side is really kind of dry. So, but this is Lahaina. This is the West Maui Mountains from the backside, not the valley. You have the valley, and then you have West Maui, and then you have Haleakala. So this is on the backside of West Maui. And out here you have whale watching. Whale watching is really cool, but you can also do that from the shores. It's a little different when you're out in a boat and they can get kind of close to you, that they are required to keep a certain distance away, but you know, sometimes the whales don't listen to that. You can get boats. This is where most of the time you can get boats to the island of Lanai. You can also get it from that other harbor that I mentioned earlier. You can get, they have a submarine out here, which is kind of cool, and I have some pictures of that. They have the Lahaina Cannery Mall and the Old Hawaiian Luau. And then they have some fun shops. They have more resorts out here. Most of the resorts are a little bit farther past Lahaina. And then they also have beautiful beaches and snorkeling. All right, so here's my picture of, I don't do a lot of, we call it kind of touristy stuff when you go whale watching, or you kind of do some of the stuff that's mostly attractive to tourists. But when I have family that comes to visit, we do get to do these things because they want to do it. So we want to show them. But most of the time when you live there, you don't really do a whole lot of the hiking and the beaches and all the luau's and all that kind of stuff. You don't really do that. So a lot of these pictures are from when my cousin came to visit, and she wanted to do all this stuff. So some of this was the first time I'd ever done any of these kind of things, like go in a submarine. I was kind of hoping when I went, I knew it wasn't gonna turn out that way, but you know, when you're watching Finding Nemo, you see all the bright color fishes. Well, the fishes are very bright. You just can't see them when you go down to a certain depth. You can't see the color. The color is filtered out. So here is the submarine. I think this is Atlantis Submarines tours. And then my cousin also wanted to go have a traditional Hawaiian luau, or go to a traditional Hawaiian luau. And this is where they have the kalua pork, and they bury the pig, and they bake in and a lot, anyway. And they have poi and all this other kind of Hawaiian food. And we have that on, when we have parties, they're basically kind of luau's, but they're much more casual. They're not the traditional kind. So all the parties pretty much have kalua pork, and the food is really good. but this is the traditional kind. It's called the Old Hawaiian Luau, and they'll have the Hawaiian dancing. This is actually Tahitian dancing more than Hawaiian dancing. The shaking of the hips when they go really fast is more Tahitian than Hawaiian. But they have it all, so they have each different style, and it's a cool experience to go to. And then, so this is leaving Lahaina, and I just wanted to share a little bit of this. My sister-in-law does, she's starting to, well, she's always sung, she has a beautiful voice, but she sings local style music. And she took this picture on one of her, on the way home from one of her gigs out in Lahaina where she was singing. And this is actually the moon. So that is the moon coming over Haleakala. It's very, very bright. And there have been times where, I mean, the moon over there is just gorgeous. It's coming up over the mountains. And one time I saw a moonbow, and it was a complete circle. So I guess the way I was looking up, there was the mist, and you could see the full rainbow circle all the way around. I wish I had a picture of that, but it was beautiful. So the moon rises and sunsets and everything is just gorgeous over there. And I don't think there's such a thing as a bad one, unless it's like pouring rain and you just can't see it. But I'm sure this will be posted. So if you want to, how am I doing on time? If you want to listen to any of the local style music, you can. I'm not going to show it right now because I think I'm running short on time and I got a lot more slides to go. So they have the traditional Hawaiian music, which is really nice. Most people listen to reggae, and then you kind of have a mix of local style music. Sorry. For the next one, it started playing. Okay, so if you go past Lahaina to Kaanapali, these are more resorts. And yes, I will share the artist and links to the thing in the chat after we're done with the presentation. But this is going past Lahaina, and again, more beautiful beaches, more trails, small trails. It gets a little bit, okay, so this part is beautiful, but you get to see some really cool stuff. Like this is a blowhole. So it's when the waves come up and it comes through a hole in the lava or the rock from the lava, and it blows up, and it's just really, really cool. However, you do not want to get too close to those things. It can be very, very dangerous. And if you're going along the road, you don't want to go too far on this particular road because you run into this. Okay, does anybody see? This is a two-way road. People are going to come from the other direction. You're going this way. It is a little sketchy, to say the least, in some parts. So that's why most people don't go all the way around this particular mountain, because of this lovely little road you have here. So see that truck that's kind of in front? If there's another car coming the other direction, one of us has to back up. And sometimes if there's somebody behind you, then that person has to back up till you can find a spot where both cars can kind of pass each other. And this happens a lot on the Hana Highway too. And you'll see some pictures of that. But there are some pretty steep cliffs, so you do not want to go too far off to the side. The first time we went around this side of the island, we were in this humongous truck. My dad's a construction worker, so he has this very large truck, and my mom peeked over the side out the window, and the tire was off the edge of the cliff by at least 2 inches. So it can be a little sketchy. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move to upcountry Maui. And this is mostly where I grew up, and I love it because I just love the views. I love being on top of the mountain and just being able to look down. You can see everything. We're looking down right now, that side of the island. This is the Kihei area. And if you're looking onto the other side, past over the bay area, that thing that looks like a bay, is that's Lahaina, and that's where we were just showing pictures of. So that's the Lahaina side, and then closer, looking straight down, is the Kihei and hotel side. And as you can see, it's a little dry. So this is some of the areas that kind of actually look like Texas in a way. All right, so we're going to go up the mountain to Haleakala National Park, or the crater. And this part, I love Haleakala. Haleakala means house of the sun. It is about 10,000 feet. It is one of the tallest mountains in the world if you measure from the ocean bottom. It is a dormant volcano. It's not extinct, so there is the possibility of it erupting. But Hawaiian volcanoes are shield volcanoes, so they don't explode. They just kind of, I don't know what you call it, fizzle. You know, they're like a fountain. They look like a fountain, but they don't explode. Thank goodness. There's some great hiking. So if you're a serious hiker, you want to do the crater. And you can camp out in the crater as well. There are some cabins. You have to book those way, 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 way in advance. But you can hike down into the crater from the top of the mountain. And then you can actually come out on the Hana side, which I will show you later. And it's probably about at least a 2-day hike. I haven't done out of the crater, but I did hike into the crater. We camped out for one of my friend's parties. She wanted to go hiking and camping in the crater. So we had to carry our backpacks with our stuff, with our you know, it was serious hiking. It was fun. It was freezing. It's freezing up there. But we hiked in, and then we hiked out another trail, which is called Switchback Trail. And so you can go down sliding sands, and then you can hike out the switchback, or you can go all the way through, which, like I said, takes a day or two, and you want to camp out in one of the cabins or bring your own tent if you're a super camper. There's a lava tube down there. There's a couple of different lava tubes, but you go into this lava tube. It is pitch black, but very cool. All right, so here are this is the sunrise. Most people will go to Haleakala Mountain to see the sunrise. And so you have to get up really, really early, drive all the way up there, and then freeze for a little while until you get to see the sun. Let me see if this video is going to work. And it's very windy. And everybody's freezing. Don't do cold. I hate cold. So I was freezing. And every time I go up there to see the sunrise, it is gorgeous, but it is freezing. So you want to make sure you layer clothes if you go up there. Bring a blanket, and then you can stick it in your car as you go hiking. Okay, let me see. Okay, so here's some more of the crater. It looks like a moon. It kind of looks like places the moon or Mars. This is the observatory. You cannot go in there. I was lucky enough. We did a field trip when I was in 8th grade, and we actually got to go into the observatory. It was very cool. But for the most part, you can't really go in there. But this is the view from the top. You can see down into the crater. They have some plants that aren't really found, as far as I know. No, they're not found anywhere else in the world. These are called silver swords. Sometimes they'll grow. There's a center part that comes out. I don't have any pictures of that, but there's a center part that comes up at the top. And this is the only place in the world that they grow. And then there's one nene goose. I think that other one's a nene goose too. But the state bird. Most of the birds, the native Hawaiian birds, are all ground nesters. So when the Europeans came over, they brought rats, and unfortunately, to try to curb the rat population that was growing, they brought mongoose, and that didn't work out so well because the rats are nocturnal and the mongoose are not. But the mongoose ended up eating a lot of the they basically, destroyed the ecosystem because they were eating all of the ground nesting birds. So a lot of them are either extinct or on the edge of extinction, like the nene goose. So it is protected, but it is also the state bird. And then here is just pictures of us hiking. You can go in the clouds. It's very cool because the clouds will be all around you. It's a mist. It's actually up in the clouds, and you can look down on some of the clouds in some of these pictures. When you're going down the mountain, I think it's crazy, but some people decide they're going to do the biking tours where the tours will take you up the mountain and then you ride down the mountain on a bike. I think that's crazy. And I would never do it, but a lot of people do. There's also something called the Run to the Sun, and it is a marathon where they run up the mountain. And I think that's crazy too, but I know people who have done it. All right, so down the mountain just a little ways, you will find Kula, Makawao, and Haiku. Kula is where I grew up, and this is my favorite hill. And the picture below it is it's one of the few, most of the time the top of the mountain has clouds on it, but this is one of the days where it was super clear. at least in the morning. Sometimes you can find it, it's super clear. In Kula, there is a Lavender Farm, Poli Poli Park, which is one of my favorite places to hike. It's like, it's the woods. I'll have pictures of that. They have parasailing. I might not spell that right. Where people just jump off the side of the mountain and it's sail down to another certain point. They have a zip line up there. I've never tried that. There is a winery around on one side of the mountain. There's Kula Lodge, which is a nice little place to stop and have coffee or something. And then we have a few shops. Makawao and Haiku have more shops than Kula. Kula really doesn't have anything. It has one gas station. At least when I was there, I had one gas station, one little restaurant, and a community center, a church, and that's about it. But most of the Makawao and Haiku have some more shops and fun stuff. And then upcountry has these trees. They're called Jacaranda trees. So if you go during a certain time of the year, I'll show you some pictures of that. You'll see them all in bloom, and they are purple. They're beautiful. So I love, like I said, I love the view. I love living up on top. I love living up and being able to see down over the entire island. And I don't know if you can tell on that one picture below in the left-hand corner, bottom left-hand corner, that's a rainbow. You see tons of rainbows. I could have done a whole slide where there's just pictures and pictures and pictures of rainbows, because it's always raining for the most part someplace, and you can usually see a rainbow, usually. And this is a picture of the Jacaranda tree. Now, my stepbrother took this. His original picture was much nicer, but I couldn't get the original image, so this is kind of cropped. But this is a Jacaranda tree. They're purple, and when you're driving on the Haleakala Highway down or up, you can see just during a certain time of year, the roads are lined with these trees. So this is purple all up and down, and it's gorgeous. I used to love just walking along the highway, which it wasn't too crowded and it was okay at that point. But if there's a lot of traffic, you probably don't want to do that. When I say highway, it's not like highways here. This is Poli Poli Park. These pictures were taken quite a few years ago. After this, there was a fire, and a lot of it actually, unfortunately, got burned. It's coming back. It's been coming back for a couple of years, but these are pictures before it got, there was the forest fire. That's me. I was a little tired. And that's my brother. He's not being nice. He's annoying me. But this is Poli Poli is one of my favorite places to park. Okay, here's Kula Lavender Farm. We have a lavender farm out in the Brenham Chapel Hill area, but their lavender here is much bigger. I think it just likes the it likes the soil more, and probably it doesn't get as hot there, so I think it enjoys it here. So they do really well. This flower here is called a protea flower, and I used to make arrangements with those. We had they come in this big huge bush, but they're really pretty. You can make some lovely arrangements with it. Okay, sorry, I gotta go a little faster here. Then going down the mountain just a little bit more. I think I forgot pictures of Makawao and such, so I'll give you a little bit more information on Makawao, which is kind of a country town. They have it's where the Paniolos, so it's like cowboys. Paniolos are cowboys. It's Makawao is kind of known as more as the cowboy town. And then we go down to Paia, which is the hippie town. And I like the Paia food. So if you're gonna go eat some food, Paia has some really good food. They have a great pizza place. They have one of the more expensive restaurants on the island is probably Mama's Fish House, and it's known for having some really, really good food. So they have lots of little shops and just a variety of food to eat in Paia. I like their little shops. If you're going to go buy a swimsuit, this is usually where I buy my swimsuits. And they have one of the big surfing beaches is Ho'okipa. And then not exactly in Paia, but Paia is kind of on the beginning to go to the road to Hana. And on that road to Hana, there's an area called Jaws. There's a Hawaiian name, but I'm not going to try to say it. Everybody just sees it as Jaws. So this is where they have like surf championships, because it has the big huge waves during certain parts of the year. Let's see if this video is going to work. I'm just going to show for a second. So you see the teeny tiny little people, and away. And to get the surfers out there, they are either dropped from a helicopter or something, or they are taken out by water skis, jet skis, sorry. And they take them out there because you can't get out from the ship. But this is just a peek at the championship. So if you want to watch more videos, you can just go to YouTube and type in Jaws Maui. You see the jet skis out there? That's how and then they have to that's how they rescue people as well. When they get wiped out, they have to go grab them. So you don't want to make it, probably won't make it. These are professionals. Don't try this. And this is one of the reasons why I don't go surfing, because I don't like being wiped out by the waves. Nice to chicken. All right, so we're going to move on to the road to Hana, which is my favorite as well. I lived out there. All right, so the road to Hana is 52 miles starting from Kahului. That's the main town where the airport is, we showed earlier. It takes about 2 to 4 hours one way to get there, because you're on this teeny tiny road, which is actually technically 2 ways. It has about, I took these stats from somewhere because I've never actually counted all the turns, because that would be just ridiculous for me to try to count all the turns. Besides, you're too busy concentrating on driving. But it's 620 hairpin turns and curves. There's usually a cliff going up and a cliff going down on one side and a cliff going up on the other side. There are 59 bridges. Most are one way. So you have to yield. If another car is coming, you got to stop and pull over so that that car can pass you coming the other direction. There is a t-shirt you can buy at the end that says, "I survived the Hana Highway." And there is a reason for that. Okay, so when you're driving to Hana, you can come the wet side. And that's usually what most people think of when they think Hana Highway is the wet side. And that's the way most people come in. Tips to survive. So if you're going to survive the Hana Highway, you want to make sure you leave early and take the entire day to do the trip. And I would recommend staying a night or two so you can get there, you can hang out in Hana, and then drive back because of the 2 to 4 hours. So usually the 2 to 4 hours is because you're stopping to take pictures and enjoying the view. My favorite thing to do, because I had to drive that road almost every single day, was to see how fast I could make it. And I usually didn't go during the high traffic times. So I think my top time was probably 1 hour and 45 minutes to 1 hour and a half, something like that. So you're kind of speeding along that highway. I wouldn't recommend. Just take it nice and slow. Usually the speed limit is like 25 miles an hour the whole way. And you really can't go too much faster than that because of all the turns. If you get car sick, you might want to volunteer to drive or pull over a lot. If you don't get car sick ever, you will probably get to experience that on this road. Most people get car sick if they are riding in the car. So unless you're driving. The only person I've known that has not gotten car sick was my cousin when she came to visit. I didn't tell her anything about the road or anything like that, so maybe it was because she didn't know, but she read a book on the way to Hana the first time she went out there. And I was looking at her like, are you crazy? You're going to get so car sick. But I didn't tell her anything, and she didn't get car sick, which I was totally surprised. But most people get really, really car sick, so you have to look out the window and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, they have tour buses that go out there, small tour buses, and they have, barf bags in those tour buses for a reason. When you're driving out there, this is probably the worst road for road rage. And I live in Houston. I've lived in Houston. I've seen the Houston highway traffic jams. Hana Highway is worse, in my opinion, because you can't pass, you can't get off, you are stuck. So when you're on the Hana Highway, don't block traffic when you're stopping to admire the pools and waterfalls. You got to make sure you have a good place to pull off if you're going to get out. Do not step in the tall grass on the edge of a cliff. There may not be rock underneath, and it is a long way down. Sadly, there have been many deaths on the Hana Highway. People don't realize that there's no rock underneath. You have this really tall grass on the edge, and people go over there to look, and there's nothing underneath. So you got to be careful. That is not the only way people have died on the Hana Highway, sadly. there are only two public bathrooms, and they are not up to Bucky standards to go to the bathroom before. And then the biggest one is pull over, pull over, pull over. Let the person behind you pass, because most of them are going to be locals, and they get very irritated when they're stuck behind 50 cars and they're trying to get to the other side to an appointment or something. All right, and good luck. All right, what's to do in Hana? Sorry, I got a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to speed through this a little bit. There are the Red Sand Beach, there's Koki Beach, there's Hamoa Beach, there's a hike to the cross, horseback riding, Waianapa State Park, which is also another beach and a hiking trail, and Ohio Gulch, which is the big one that most people go hiking up to, this giant waterfall. And then there's lots of food out there. Most of them close early. Like everything in Hana closes early, so usually lunchtime is the one where you want to go get the food from the food trucks. And there's the local food trucks are the best. There is a hotel out there and another restaurant, but I would recommend the food trucks. They're the best. So here are just a few pictures. The one in the top left is actually Red Sand Beach. That was known as the nudist beach. I don't know if it's still the nudist beach. You have to go on this really, really steep, narrow trail that's made out of the lava rock and sand that just slides off the side of the cliff that you're trying to walk on this little trail to get to this beach. But it's beautiful snorkeling. It's kind of blocked in by some rocks, so it's kind of peaceful. That's what makes it such a good spot for snorkeling. Here I have pictures of me at the top of the trail to the cross. It's just up through a pasture. It's right in front of the hotel. And they usually have, Easter sunrise services at the cross. So you can see that picture down at the bottom. So that's where we usually do our Easter sunrise services when we feel like getting up. Waianapa State Park is another one I mentioned. You can't go, sadly, you cannot go into this pool anymore, but it was a pool, and there's a thing on the side of it that says the legend that goes with the pool. There was a princess and she hid underneath there. She was hiding from somebody, but then her attendants were waving fans to keep her cool, and they saw the reflection. The person that was chasing her saw the reflections in the pool, and sadly, she was captured and killed. And then occasionally, the legend goes that you can see her blood in the pool, and that's during certain times of the year. There's, I guess, a type of shrimp or krill or something that shows up in that pool. But it is when you could go in there, the water was freezing cold, and there was a ledge in the back that you could sit on. Once you got used to the freezing cold temperature of the cave. But it was really cool. Sadly, you can't go in there anymore because the trees on top were growing and the roots were making the rocks above it unstable. So they had to close it off to the public. But this is Waianapa State Park. And there's a trail that you can do along the coast. And these are some of the views that you can see from that trail. It's a gorgeous walk. The trail is not exactly an easy trail. It's mostly lava rock, so make sure you wear good shoes if you decide to do that. Here is a picture of the lava tube in Hana. You do have to pay a fee to go into this lava tube. Haleakala National Park, the crater area, and then a trail that I'm going to show you in a little while is you do have to pay to go into the national parks, but you can get a pass basically. So you would just want to get a couple-day pass so you can go on either one. And then the lava tube is on private property, so they do charge. But it's kind of cool. So it's nice to go into the little lava tube. There are some much cooler ones actually on the Big Island, or at least the one I went to, bigger. But on Maui, those are the two that I know of. This is a picture of Hamoa Beach. This is probably my favorite beach and why I am such a beach snob. You can see the crystal clear water. I like to be able to see where my feet are going. And occasionally you can see dolphins out here. My brother has told me, oh, this morning I swam with the dolphins. Yeah, that's very nice for you. So he'll brag about that sometimes when he's out there surfing. It gets extremely crowded, and I'll touch on that in a minute. This is just a little bit of local life. That's my dad playing golf. He does not play golf, but that's in the middle of a cow pasture. So if we do play golf, that's where we play. There's world-class golf courses on Maui, but no, we don't do that. We just play in the cow pasture. That's a picture of the house, a dog. The dogs love to chew up the coconuts. And then my stepmom loves horses, so we have a few horses. I don't get to go riding. I'm not a very good rider. Only when I go visit her, I mostly just clean the horse hooves, but we don't get to go riding very often. All right, so here are some views that you won't be able to see as a tourist. Sorry, these are mostly on private property, or you have to go through private property to see them. There are some places where you have to use the rope to get down the cliff to get to the beach. So this is one of them. That is a rope that gets you down to that beach. And it's beautiful, and I have a picture. I love the sound of the ocean coming up and then going back on the rocks. Here are a few other views. My dad built a house up in this one where the arch is, and that's actually right before my stepbrother's wedding. That arch was built for the wedding. They could stand underneath. And these are a couple other areas that you just can't get to. Again, this beach over on the right side is another one where you have to have a rope to get down to, and it is on property that you're not supposed to go through. Sadly, not everybody listens to that. And then here's the main trail in Hana, Ohio Gulch, or the 7 pools or 7 secret pools. This is the big one. There's a big trail that goes all the way up. You go through this lovely bamboo forest. You can see a picture of the bamboo forest on the top right. And it gets you up to this giant waterfall. And that picture really does not do it justice. It's very, very tall. There's signs there that says don't stand underneath it because rocks fall, and a few people have been killed by falling rocks. So you do need to pay attention to that. But it is I do that trail. I actually run up that trail and run back down to see how fast I can do it, because I've done it multiple times. But most of the time, you used to not have bridges over it kind of winds back and forth over the pools, and there used to not be bridges, so you used to have to wade through the pools. And if it was raining, you really shouldn't do that, because there's multiple waterfalls, and some of them people have been swept over the waterfall, and again, they did not make it. Now, if you continue through Hana and you decide to go around to finish the whole road and go all the way around the mountain, you will go out the dry side. Most car rental places don't want you to go out the dry side because it is not paved for a long stretch of time, and it tears up your car pretty good. If anything, it just makes it very, very dirty. I used to take this road all the time because there was less traffic, but it did wear out your shocks a lot. And as you can see from some of these pictures, there again, you're going to have to honk as you go around the corners or back up to let people pass you. This is also the area where I mentioned earlier Charles Lindbergh's grave was. So he's out this direction. And this is just more pictures of the dry side, which I think is beautiful, especially at sunset. If you're driving out there, it looks dry. And sometimes when it's raining, that's all green. So it's even prettier, but I don't know. I think it's pretty even dry. All right, so what to keep in mind on your visit. That's my dog, or that was our dog, Snow. She passed away a couple years ago. If you're going to go to Maui, I would recommend staying a while. 3 weeks would be great if you want to chill. So you want to make sure you take time to chill, and don't try to fit a bunch of stuff in one day. So each of the areas I kind of told you about, you might actually want to take a whole day to do that. Hana, take a couple days because there's a lot to do, and that drive is a doozy. And if you want to do day trips to the other islands, the only one I might recommend would be going to Oahu to see Pearl Harbor. I've done that. We got up in the morning, made an appointment so that we could actually go on to the Arizona Memorial, which was very cool. They have a really cool museum. So we just did a day trip where we got up in the morning, went to see Pearl Harbor, and then I think we walked along Waikiki. And I used to live along Waikiki. It's okay. It's just very crowded. And I don't think the beach is all that great, to tell you the truth. On Oahu, the best beaches are probably on the North Shore and then on the other side. So Oahu, day trip is okay. Although I did live there. There are some beautiful places on Oahu, but for the most part, it's much more crowded. So if you're going to do a day trip, just go to see Pearl Harbor. There are tons of things to see on the other islands. If you want to go see the volcano, go to the Big Island. Kauai has like a mini Grand Canyon area, and I've never gotten to see it. I went to Kauai, but we didn't get to go see that part. I've always wanted to see it. So, I mean, you could spend probably a week at each of the other islands with all the stuff that they have to do there. Note, slippers are not good for hiking on lava rock. They will be shredded depending on the type of lava rock. It's like some of the lava rock is like glass. I think that's called the 3 A's. And that rock can really mess up your shoes. So you want to make sure you wear good shoes. Wear sunscreen or you will go home looking like a lobster. You can tell tourists and myself, you can tell me a mile away because I lay outside, and then even my like shins are fried. So I've gotten some pretty gnarly sunburns. All right. What else to keep in mind on your visit? The locals are not on vacation. It's kind of, I mean, this is where it gets a little bit complicated because Hawaii is a big tourist place, and that's how a lot of people will make their living. But it's a little bit difficult sometimes when you're living on an island and there's a bunch of tourists. So be respectful and understanding of the locals. Sometimes they are not happy. Hawaii is not a theme park, so pay attention to the warning signs or when a local tells you to do something that is not to do something that's dangerous. So as you can see here, the state does not always put up warning signs, so the locals have taken it upon themselves to try to keep people safe. So they'll let you know there's been multiple drownings here. You just need to be really careful. Lately there's been, so this is where it gets a little difficult because there's been a surge of visitors since COVID actually. And it's kind of difficult on the residents. So when you're trying to get someplace or you're trying to just enjoy the place that you live and it's super, super crowded, it can be a little frustrating. So the residents are they sometimes feel kind of pushed out of their own beaches and their own areas. Because they're just overrun by too many people. But at the same time, they want the tourist because that's the income. That's part of the economy. The road to Hana, I've heard this is what has been told, and it was pretty bad when I lived there as well. But the road to Hana right now is almost nearly impossible between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. because, again, like I said, pull over when you're on the Hana Highway. Because there's tons of people on the road and it's hard to get places. All right, here's super quick COVID. As I mentioned before, there are record numbers of tourists coming apparently. It was closed down for a little while and my brother mentioned, oh, it's so nice. There's nobody on the beaches. But now everybody's back and there's been a surge. So if you go soon, it's going to be really, really crowded. I talked to my cousin who is she was a manager at a hotel, and this is the information she gave me recently, like a week or two ago. Book everything as far in advance as possible. I used to buy my tickets way back when, about 3 months in advance at least. That's when I found the cheapest prices. Now I know some prices are probably pretty cheap in general, but you still want to book everything in advance. Go during the off season, which is late September to early mid-November before Thanksgiving. And then this is kind of important. If you're going soon, get COVID test and the results before you fly, because if you get your results after you fly, you still have to get the mandatory 10-day quarantine. Even if you come back negative, you'll still have to go through the 10-day quarantine. And if you're only going to be there a week or two, you're going to spend the entire time in your hotel room, and they will not let you out. Like they track you. And then here I have a link to some travel partners for testing sites. That will also be available. You can come back and look at it because this is being recorded. All right. So, aloha. Everybody knows what aloha means. Hello, goodbye, and love. And ahui ho until we meet again. The end. I'm sorry I rushed through that last part, but we were running a little short on time because I had a lot. And I missed a lot of stuff I would have loved to share.
Thank you so much, Leah. This was a wonderful tour from a more local perspective about Hawaii, and hopefully someday we will get to visit in person and to enjoy some of the many wonderful things that you've shown us.
I do recommend going. Despite the crowdedness, if you have a chance to go. I mean, it's a beautiful place to go and just to enjoy. But just keep in mind, there's locals. I mean, anybody who's ever lived in a high tourist area will probably understand that it can get really crowded sometimes.
Yes. So we will keep your advice in mind, and we are going to be looking at Relax, Just Do It, Effective Strategies to Decrease Stress and Anxiety next week with counselor Catherine Denham. So do please join us next week at 10 a.m. here at Life. It was so good to see all